Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Do you struggle with being negative? Most people struggle with being negative. Being positive takes action. Using simple positive actions will allow you to win each day. Being negative is a discharge in three key areas. Number one, your mindset to achieve your goals. Number two, your influence on self and others. And number three, your ability to learn and grow. Implementing simple positive actions into your life will allow you to win each day. Being positive takes action, so let's work to be positive. To receive a weekly video email from me on one simple positive action, subscribe to the series by going to chargepodcast.com to get the link to register today. Life is short, so why live your life by default when you can live your life by design? Make it a great day. Welcome, Chargers. We're glad to have you again this week for another great guest. I'm telling you, third quarter just keeps moving along, but my goal is to bring you different guests each week that gives you different perspectives and different viewpoints. And I love the topic that we're going to talk today. But before I introduce Dane, I'm going to ask Dane, what problem will you solve for our Charge Podcast listeners?
The problem that I'm going to focus in on today is that of engagement.
Excellent. Engagement. And folks, you're going to want to stick around because Dane's doing some great work, has recently wrote a book called The Dream Machine, but let me introduce you to him. Dane Espegard is a culture consultant who teaches, assists, and executes the implementation of culture within companies centered around dream achieving, emphasizing the development of personal lives of team members. Dane brings a successful people-oriented method to the market in his latest book, The Dream Machine. Dane, it is great to have you on the Charge Podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
I'm excited about this conversation because I love culture myself. And there's so many different things that we could go to and go on that side of it. But, you know, people's heard culture a lot. But I think the problem is some people think it's this fluff. And one of the things you talk about is creating and driving a positive company culture. So before I get into some of my other questions, I want you to kind of share with me, what do you mean by that? Why do you think that's so important?
Yeah, I think you know, the whole conversation around culture, I understand why people will oftentimes think it's kind of some out there fluffy concept, because it's for a lot of organizations, it's difficult to actually say this is what our culture is, and here's the direct line impact to the bottom line, right? It's one of those things where you know it's there, you know it has an impact, but you can't quite quantify it. And so when I think about a positive culture in an organization, it's one of those things that is the reason that somebody wants to stay. It's the reason that they don't have eyes for other organizations, right? It's the reason that they're saying, hey, I'm really looking forward to my next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years here at this organization. And we live in a time right now where, you know, what did the pandemic do? It opened up normal territorial or geographical lines of competition, where if I own an organization in Minneapolis, I can't, I'm only going to compete with people in Minneapolis. And now all of a sudden I have, you know, this situation where a San Francisco company can recruit my people as well. So I think in the world that we live in now, where you can work remote and you can do your job in just a different fashion, different way, that culture really needs to be stronger. And it also has to be built differently, because it's not the normal stuff that's on the wall of the organization or the water cooler conversation that used to naturally happen. And so we have to, as leaders, I think we have to be much more intentional about how are we going to, you know, roll out our culture, or how are we going to enforce what we'd like it to be.
I have a mastermind, and with my business owners, I've been speaking about this with them because it's changing. And the thing is for some of us, if we've been in business a long time, I've been over 30 years, sometimes you have a hard time changing. And I was telling them, it's not if you want to change, you're going to have to change because business is changing and everybody's different. And I understand some people, they make widgets and they got to have that person there to be able to make that widget. Yes. That's pretty hard to make remotely. But the thing they have to think about is what can they do in their organizations in this area of culture? And what can they really start to implement in? Because that's how you're still going to attract them. I love what you said, because I saw that in my own business. When you have a great culture, it keeps people longer. Does not mean that you'll keep them lifetime. Right. Those days are gone, but you will keep them longer. I was in retail sales, and for a lot of people, it was less than 6 to 12 months they'd be with us. And we had folks with us for 3 years and 5 years. And I said, did we do that for everybody? No. But man, the people that it made a difference for, they did. I love what your topic, because you wrote the book about the dream machine. So I kind of want to go there as, why do you think, when we're talking about culture, but with the book, you talked about the topic that dreams matter so much now, and you kind of gave us just a little bit of it as you were talking before. Why does that matter so much when we're talking about culture?
Yeah, the whole, how I got centered on this, on the dreams concept, is like the centerpiece for our culture. There's a quote that I heard years ago, and it's kind of the backbone of this entire thing, which is, when there's hope in the future, there's power in the present. And the idea of, if I can connect my team members to something that's out there in the future, personally, professionally, whatever it may be, then I have this team member who's much more alive and engaged today. And so going back to the point we were just talking about, I've been in the direct sales industry for 20 years. And so when you talk about turnover, I mean, that's, every industry deals with it, but for us, that's always the $1 million question. And so I've always had a stance or a belief that every single person in my organization is temporary. And so I need to constantly be courting that person. Right. And I'd much rather have a very engaged, on fire person for a year than somebody asleep at the wheel for 2, 3, 5 years. Right. And so if I can engage them, even if it means I'm developing them up, that they outgrow my organization, that's great, because they had a greater time there and it had a bigger impact during that stretch.
Yeah, I love that, because so many people, they think, well, if I develop them, they'll leave them. Well, if you don't, they stay.
yeah, right. Exactly.
You want those results? That doesn't sound so good. I love what you talked about, is that hope in the future. And over these last several years, man, as I speak to people, and I'm sure you're the same way, Dane, you feel like that's lost a little bit. So, man, a topic, it's very practical at this time. But I'm curious, from your standpoint, what's the difference between goals and dreams? And why do you think those dreams matter at work? You've given us a little bit, but I'm sure you can go deeper there.
Yeah. So when I think about goals, I've been, like I said, in direct sales for a very long time. And so I've done goal setting with people nonstop, right? What's the goal for next quarter, next month, whatever it may be. And all too often, individuals will select a goal that they know that they're going to be able to hit, because, we want to look good, feel good. We want to hit our goals. But the purpose of the goal isn't necessarily the achieving of it. It's who we become in the process. It's the stretch idea, right? Of, well, if I go after something bigger, I might not hit it, but in that process, I'm going to find out more about myself. And I'm also going to be able to probably reach and think differently for the next time. And what I found with dreams is, once I shift that word and, hey, we're going to go through a dream storming exercise, is what I take our people through. It gives permission to be ungrounded, non-realistic, right? To be able to say, well, what if? And we're so good at that in our younger years. And then it's kind of like beaten out of us a little bit, whether it's, life, whether it's, we reach kind of a certain age, parents start saying like, hey, got to be realistic, pick that safe major. And then you get a mortgage, and then, just everything in life for the most part is going to really try and keep us realistic. And nothing great happens from that. And for a lot of people, what it can do is kind of stamp out that spirit that's going to really get them fired up when they wake up in the morning. And so, what I've been doing in the direct sales world has been working with Cutco Cutlery. Nobody comes to our company because they have a passion for knives. Nobody's like, oh, I found it. I found my calling. And so I've had to get creative with, well, what can keep somebody here for a long time? And really it's, if I can create this vehicle known as the job, to be the engine to get them to live the life of their dreams outside of work, I'm probably going to keep people longer here. And so what we do is we help them create this massive list, 200, 300, 400 things that they want to do, live, experience throughout their lives. It's a little different than a bucket list, because what we'll do is we'll take them through 9 categories. So they're health things, relationship things, spirituality things, but then also the normal like travel, adventure, whatnot. And then, so now all of a sudden they have this never ending source of opportunity to say, well, I'm going to take this one thing and put it in my calendar 4 months from now. And then the conversation between myself and an employee or a team member is like, hey, what's the next thing that you have on your list? Cool. What do we need to do here at work? What's your performance need to be so that you can accomplish that? And so those conversations then center around them as a person living the life of their dreams, not what are you doing for me here at work? Yeah. And so that to me is such a different and fun conversation for me to have as the leader.
Yeah, when you have that as a leader, that just changes everything, because productivity goes up, because they're wanting to achieve to get to that point to be able to do it. Because sometimes it may be they need hit a financial goal to be able to make that dream come true. Yeah. One thing you talked about that I'm curious of, and I'm sure it's talked about in the book, so we'll give all those details and how they can get a copy of it. But can you share a little bit about the dream storming? I think you talked about, because one of the things I'm concerned about is what you said. Some of us, we get pressed down and we stop dreaming. And, I have a lot of entrepreneurs on here, but I think it's everyone in general. We stop dreaming and we just and to be quite honest, that's what's created the challenge the last couple of years, because we feel like we're in a cycle that we can't really get out of, and every day becomes like the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So and on that note too, to kind of, before I get to what the dream storming process is, I also think that, over the course of the pandemic, everybody has been kind of forced. We've had to hit that pause and reset button, right? And on top of that, though, a lot of people feel, well, now I'm not in control. I have less control than I've ever had. And what I would say is we actually have more control than we've ever had. Yeah. And when somebody has this list to go from, during the pandemic, I wrote the book as the pandemic, like 5 months in, because I got to see how my team was reacting to the pandemic, which was totally different than anybody that was in my personal life. They were hard charging. They're like, this is great. I look at all these things that I'm getting done. Whereas everybody else was just binging Netflix and, binge drink, everything at home, those initial months of just excess. Right. So the dream storming process, what we do is we take people through the 9 categories. And I've taken, in my organization, the average age is a little younger. And since I came out with the book, I've been able to run workshops for different organizations. My friend Justin that we talked about, his mastermind, those people are very high powered, hard charging, successful financially. And it was really neat to run his team through it in other organizations, because I hear this a lot where somebody's like, I've done a million goal setting things. I'm like, that's not what this is. And then afterward, that's the consensus. That's the feedback I get, which is, this was so great because I haven't sat down and given myself the 2-3 hours to actually think, hey, how do I want to show up as a family member? How do I want to show up as a dad? What's lacking in my health? What are the relationships that give me energy? So there's a lot more. It's not, the dreams on the list aren't all check it off the list. Like, oh, I did that. It's a lot of, there's some of that, but then there's also, how do I want to live? Who do I want to be? What's my ideal self? And so it kind of has a neat combination of both. I take teams through those, typically through their organization. On my website, there's also, it's getting built right now. I think when this is released, there's going to be a kind of pre-recorded dreams workshop that somebody can go through on their own or with their family at home as well. And I've been getting asked about that nonstop, and so that's next up on our list to put out there as well.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that, because I think that is a real challenge that people, you have to dream, and when we don't, it kind of sets things in. I've been in this process, and I do a forward visioning and try to get people to look out 3 years. And I'll be honest, I do it. So to me, it's easy.
Yeah,
man, I found some people struggle because putting it down and saying what they want to accomplish in even that 3-year standpoint, they struggle with it and stuff. And sometimes it's like you said, they're used to setting goals. But again, there's something about commitment too when you write it down. Yeah. And they've really struggled with that, because I've got a mastermind group, and that's the big thing I want them to do is, where do they want to be in 3 years? Because my goal is to help them get there. through what we're doing through this process.
I love that. And I just recently did one of those, the 3-year vivid vision, right? I just did one of those for myself. But one of the differences too, I don't have problems with being able to see it, right? Because I do this type of stuff on a regular basis. But what I've heard is feedback too with the dreams. What's great with it is there's no obligation. And so people are able to write a lot more down because they're not like, and I'm very clear with it. Hey, writing it down, you're not making a commitment. This is maybe at some point in your life you do, but you don't have to say, I'm going to do it just because you wrote it down. And that's how we're able to get 200, 300, 400 things in a list, is for people to be, not saying I'm going to do this, because we hate commitment. Right. And so it allows them to just put it down and say, well, maybe this sounds interesting. Maybe someday I'll want to do that.
Yeah. And I love how you said, 9 pages, because that becomes a free flowing version.
Yes.
And the thing is, though, even though when they dream it and they put it down, people would be so amazed if they kept their list.
Yeah.
That they come back to over time, maybe it's 10 years, and they'll be so shocked of how many things that they'll accomplish in each one of them.
Yep.
Let's pull it to a little more back to the company side of it and stuff, because we talked about the individuals and why it's so important. But can you share a few steps with how a company can help change their culture? Because you and I both agree that is so important today because of what's changing in society, and business is changing. It's not you want to, you have to change with it, and a culture becomes that driving force to help retain.
Yeah. Yeah, I think first and foremost is identifying like what is actually the true culture right now. And that's the first piece. And, it's one of those things where we want a culture to be a certain way, but that doesn't mean that it is just because that's what we said it was. Right. And so finding out the true nature of what your culture is by listening to the people that are on your team. Some of the people that have the best opinion, best feedback are the people that are actually exiting. Right. And asking like, hey, what was your real experience? And as much as, a leader, that we don't want to believe the negative. We're like, well, that was just that guy, right? Or that was just that gal in terms of what her thought was. But she spent time here and that was her experience. And so something led to that. So it's asking the people that maybe have recently exited, as well as the active team members, like, hey, how would you describe the culture here? I think that's step one. Step two is, it's a little bit of the visioning of like, hey, what is the ideal culture? What do we want here? When I set up the culture in our organization, it was back in 2013. And the way I did it, I had already started 2 separate teams. And the first one, the culture was whatever it was. I was, kind of a rookie and didn't understand necessarily how to do it, but I was able to look back. And then the second time was a little bit better. And then moving to kind of open my third business, that's when I had the opportunity to look and say, all right, what were the mistakes that I made? And if this were the last team that I ever built, what would the culture be that I would be excited about a decade from now? Like what would still engage me as the leader? And that's how I settled on what we have. And then, so the first step, take the temperature of where it's at. Second one is the ideal situation. And then I think the third one is that the leadership team has to be fully bought into living it, right? Like by example. And so with the dreams one, I love that because for me, it's like, all I have to do is live my dreams out loud in front of my people. And that gives more fuel to what the culture is in our organization.
That's excellent. That's a great step, because that's the thing is, I love what you talked about starting with is knowing what your culture is. You got to get a feel for that, because I'm a firm believer is culture is not dictated from the top. Mm-hmm. It's more lived from the top. On that side of it. I got a real pleasure this week. One of my former employees, we went to a ball game and she come off to the bleachers, saw us as we were walking in, haven't seen her probably in 3 to 5 years. And just, I saw you all coming up, wanted to say hi and everything else, and made me feel so good. And later that night, I actually took gratitude, saying, that means a lot. And we talked some about our days there. She used to do a lot of training for our team. She's now an educator and she's an awesome science teacher. And I've heard that from other people because from her, the school district that she's in and stuff. And I said, well, that training ground that you did has really made something. And she goes, I use a lot of those tools because get through an hour of science for some students is a tough one. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it is great to get the feedback later on, right? To hear that somebody still valued their time there.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the thing I think business owners miss is when they do it. We all have examples. I shared one. I'm sure, Dane, you could share one with us of somebody that you impacted by what you were able to do outside of just the work part of it. And that's the thing, is we want them to bring their best self and their whole self to us. So as organizations, we have to really change, and we have to decide, okay, if we want their whole self, then how can we help them in that process? And that's what I see the Dream Machine. And I have not got to read it yet, but I plan on picking up a copy because I love the concept of to be able to share with audiences, and really to be able to share with people and people that I know. Because my thing is now I only have one employee, but the thing is I impact other organizations, right? And that's what I want them to impact their people.
Yep, absolutely.
So share with me, we've talked a little bit about it. We talked about some of the benefits of it that's there, but also ultimately it comes down to the Dream culture impact. It impacts those personal lives of those team members. And can you share, you've talked about even in your own organization, how has that impact made such the difference?
So it is, it's rewarding on the business side, and then it's also so fulfilling on an individual personal side. My life has been changed by the Dreams concept. And like I said, as the leader, I need to live it out loud and be the example. So on my list, last year, my wife and I shouldn't say my wife and I, because it was my list. I accomplished 22 dreams that were on my list last year in 2021. And my wife had her own list, and some of them are the same, but a lot of them are separate. But for instance, let's see, we're filming this on today's Thursday. 2 days ago, I had a in-person conference for my organization, and we do this at every event. We open up with recent dreams achieved. And, I sent out a text, hey, since our last time together, send me and I sent this to like our top 15 individuals. I said, send me a list of the dreams that you've accomplished since blank date. And it was so cool to see. We had 6 slides filled with dreams. The average person probably had 10 to 15 dreams that were on there. And it's such a powerful way for us to kind of reinforce, like, this is who we are. We're people that live the life of our dreams. And they're all income levels, low, medium, high, right? But what they're all doing is they're engaged with life. And I think that to me is the piece that I love most about this, is that I'm around, I get to work with people that are just living life. They're not just showing up and, oh, it's another Tuesday. It's like, nope, they're all on purpose, right? The whole saying of, if I'm on purpose, I'm off self. And we do a really good job with the dreams concept of keeping people on purpose, because once we cross something off the list, it's great. What's next? What's next on the list? So there's always that next up mentality for, the way for somebody to live.
That's awesome. And the engagement, they talk all the time, the Gallup measures engagement in organizations. Mm-hmm. When you do that, your engagement just jumps up. And, the numbers, I haven't seen recently a report, but I know just a couple of years ago, it was like 35%. 65% is disengaged, right, in the workplace. That kills productivity. And think of the difference of what's happening in an organization when they're engaged, and you get that in the 60 and 70%. Your organization is flying compared to most organizations that's barely living.
And with a lot of companies are doing things to try and increase engagement, such as, hey, what if we went from a 5-day work week? This is really popular right now, right? To a 4-day work week. And if engagement turns up, they're going to get more done in those 4 days than 5 days. And with the dreams concept, it's a little different. Like, the individuals that are on my team, almost all of them are on some sort of a commission basis. So they work when they want to work, right? But I have no problem with getting people to work because they're working for their own motivations and their own goals. It's not because I said, you must do this for us. It's they want to go out and do this for themselves. And that's the, dreams cost money. Right. A lot of them do. And so there's also that element of like, well, if I want to do these things, I need to be kind of, happening at work.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to picking up the book, and I recommend everybody else. It's The Dream Machine. We're going to have in show notes where you can click on the link, but I think you actually have something that you're willing to give the audience as a gift. Is that right, Dane?
Yeah. So I made the decision at the beginning of the year with, kind of as I was setting my intentions for the year. And one of them is to try and just impact as many people as possible with the dreams concept, to give away the book for free. And so if anybody goes to my website, it's just daneespegard.com and then /free gift. So daneespegard.com/free gift. There'll be a spot there that's they can get a downloadable PDF version. So it's not, as reader friendly as the physical book, but if somebody wants to get started reading that way, that's a really simple way.
And he was on the Amazon bestseller list, so it's a great one to pick up. So I highly recommend that. And we'll have all that in show notes because we know our chargers are active and doing other things at this time. But would you go ahead now? I like to do it before, and we'll share it at the end too a little bit. But go ahead and share if they wanted to connect with you, Dane. How could they connect with you?
Yeah, so social media and then my website are the two main places. So I'm pretty active on Instagram. We do a lot of sharing of people's dreams and stuff as well, which I love. Like people will tag me when they're accomplishing a dream, which I love, and then we put out different content on Instagram. I'm the only Dane Espegard that's out there, and then my website, just daneespegard.com. There's the spot for the pre-recorded dreams workshop, as well as just being able to connect with me on there as well.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. We'll have it all in show notes to make it convenient for everyone. So please, if you're interested, go there and check Dane out. But before I let Dane go, we always go to the recharge round, and I ask 2 questions to every guest that's the same. As I told you, and the podcast is charged, but that's a mantra of mine. Create habits around real goals every day. Dane, what habit do you think's helped you to lead success in your life?
Back in 2010, I had a really my most difficult professional year of my life, which then also made it a difficult personal year. And so I made a commitment that year to the people that were experiencing the success that I wanted. I was asking a lot more questions of like, why are they getting those results? Why am I not? And I recognized that I had kind of hit my ceiling of natural ability, whereas all of these individuals have been talking about like what they were doing to grow. And so I committed to a different morning routine, essentially, of exercise, but then also reading 30 minutes a day. And that really, the fall of 2010 is when I started that, and then it went into quite a few years of consistent growth within my business. And I really kind of cite that as the foundation for like the next decade, if you will, of success that I had.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because I have a lot of guests, and probably over 70% of them, they have some sort of morning routine that makes the difference for them. And that's the key, and being able to read and because it's really the only time that you can protect for yourself. Because, before you have little ones, Dane's had a little one walk in today.
Yep.
There's challenges that come up through the day, but you can protect that early morning time. The hardest part is when that alarm goes off. Mine went off at 4:45 this morning. It's got to get up.
Yep. And a good friend of mine wrote the book, if anybody wants another one, called Miracle Morning.
Yes. By
Hal Elrod. He's now a neighbor of mine also, but awesome book in terms of trying to figure out your morning habits.
Yeah. Great book there too and stuff. So let's ask you one more question. We all make mistakes. We would love to have a do-over. We don't get those in life, but we can create our own do-over. What's one of those failures or mistakes that you made, Dane, that you said, boy, if I had to do it differently, I would change that now?
Yeah, I was thinking about that question, and I definitely don't have I think everything happens for a reason, and the decisions I make I learn lessons from them and lead me to where I'm at now. But if I had to go back and say one that I would probably do over different, it would definitely be the way that I handled my finances as a young individual, coming through college and then post-college, really for the first 5 or 6 years. One of the things that I love about what I teach with the dream stuff to the young people that work with us is that they have all this direction for their finances. So it doesn't just disappear. I didn't have good money habits, but I think if I would have had a dreams list at a young age of like, hey, I want to invest in a property and so for me, I wasn't 28, 29 when I bought my first investment property, and I've been aggressive with that since. But if I could go back, I've got a couple of young people on my team right now that are 22, 23 that own 2-3 properties. And, I often think, man, if I would have had that earlier, but that'd probably be the one.
Yeah, we live and learn. And we bought our first properties in 94 and 95, and then I didn't buy another one for 10 years. And it's like, that would be one I would change. I'm not saying I'd have one every year, but every couple of years.
Yeah.
But it makes a real big difference in some of those passive income that you're able to create on those different streams there. Well, Dane, I appreciate you sharing that. Share again with them your website and your information, and then also the free gift that you're willing to give them.
You bet. Yeah, it's just DaneEspegard.com, and last name is Espegard. And then / free gift would be the for the book, but you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn or anything as well.
Excellent. Well, Dane, we appreciate your time and thank you for sharing with our Chargers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great conversation. Thanks, Gary.
Chargers, now I tell you, you've got to take action. Because the thing is, you got excited. You were thinking about some dreams that you would like to achieve as Dane and I were speaking. So I always give you an action item. The biggest one I'm going to give you today is go get his download. He's willing to give you the book free. And then, of course, if you enjoy that and you want to share it with somebody else, then pick up a copy and share it out. He's about impacting people. That's the reason he's given you that as a free download. He's able to impact more people. And we do this because that's one of our goals that we have, to be able to impact others. So I hope you do that. That's my action for you. And then create some dreams for yourself. Get out there and let yourself go and be free with it and tell yourself, and just write them down. And I don't care if you put that away and you never look at it again. You'll be surprised, because if you clean it up and later find it, you're going to find out that you've achieved some of those dreams. So Chargers, come back next week. This would be a great podcast to share with 3 of your friends and family, because maybe they want to set some dreams too. So make it a great day. We'll see you next week.
This podcast has ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.